शारद चंद्र सुंदर मुखम ताम्रारविंदेक्षणम् भक्ताभीष्टवराभयप्रदकरम् कौपीनमात्रोज्ज्वलम् स्वात्मानन्दरसानुभूतिविवशम् सर्वानवद्यांगकम् श्रीमन्तं श्रीरमणेश्वरं गुरुवरं योगासनाध्यासितं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरं ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् ध्यायेत् श्रीरमणेश्वरम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहमहमिति साक्षातात्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वं चिन्वतामज्जतव पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। Namo Ramana. We will commence the Friday's Atma Vichara by listening to Bhagavan's Upadesham. We have been reading from the book Ramana Answers, Self-Inquiry, 1900 to 1950, a compilation of all the answers given by Bhagavan on Atma Vichara by our founder, President Sri Ramanacentre. And we are looking at the section from 1936 to 1950, the conversations. After reading Bhagavan's Upadesham, we will contemplate on it by his grace and then have a 20-minute Atma Vichara session. Following that, our President Sarada Akka would be talking about Atma Vichara as it has been contemplated in Ramana Gita, and then we will have the concluding prayers to Bhagavan. We are looking at the last week question and continuing to meditate on that. The devotee, it is the 19th question, and the devotee asks, how is one to destroy the ego? Bhagavan says, the ego is like one's shadow thrown on the ground. If one attempts to bury it, it will be foolish. The self is only one. If limited, it is the ego. If unlimited, it is infinite and it is the reality. The bubbles are different from one another and numerous, but the ocean is only one. Similarly, the egos are many, whereas the self is one and only one. When told that you are not the ego, realize the reality. Why do you still identify yourself with the ego? It is like saying, don't think of the monkey while taking medicine. It is impossible. Similarly, when the reality is mentioned, why do you continue to meditate Shivoham or Aham Brahmasmi without tracking and understanding its significance? It is not enough to repeat the bare words or think of them. Reality is simply the loss of the ego. Destroy the ego by seeking its identity. Because the ego is no entity, it will automatically vanish and reality will shine forth by itself. This is the direct method, whereas All other methods are done only retaining the ego. In those paths, there arise so many doubts, and the eternal question remains to be tackled finally. But in this method, the final question is the only one, and it is raised from the very beginning. No sadhanas are necessary for engaging in this quest. In the last week contemplation, we looked at the first portion of the answer where Bhagavan is saying that the ego is like a shadow thrown on the ground. That means any amount of our understanding of the self is the new identity of ourselves, the new avatar of ours. And therefore, we have really not buried the shadow. Now the shadow has come on top of what we thought our hand would bury or our foot would bury it. It would rise on top of it. Similarly, all of our understanding is, is a new identity of the ego. We saw that. And therefore, Bhagavan says it is very foolish to try to do that. Rather, we should understand that there is only one self, and if that self becomes limited, how does it become limited? By limiting itself to some object. And moment it becomes limited, it is the ego. And the common or the substratum of all the object is the thought, and the I thought is the foremost of it. So it is, we can say that it is the thoughts that limit us. And therefore, that is nothing but an ego. But if there is no thought, then what remains is the unlimited infinite, and that is the reality. And like the bubbles are different from one another and numerous, but the ocean is only one. Self is only one. When that attends to the bubble, the thought which rises, and then it suddenly appears numerous. Similarly, the egos are many, whereas the self is one and only one. This week, we will look at the second portion of the answer, wherein Bhagavan is saying, when told that you are not the ego, realize the reality. Why do you still identify yourself with the ego? In this morning puja in the shrine, there were many devotees who had come. And as I had turned myself towards Bhagavan Vigraham and doing the puja, this thought within me was there that maybe all of them who are sitting there are watching me do the puja. And to me, and by me attending to that thought, to me it was appearing quite real in a sense that it was kind of asking me to react according to that. Whereas in reality, all of them were sitting and meditating with their eyes closed. And when I finally sat down for meditation, Bhagavan gave me a thought just by attending to that thought that everybody is watching your thing. Look at how your world was created. Your world was fully in holding on to the reality of that, whereas the fact was nobody was watching you. If a thought if such a thought can create an imaginary world for you, what about all other thoughts? Why do you think that they are also not creating an imaginary world? And therefore, any thought I would attend would always mean that I am creating an imaginary world at that point in time. So even to say I will not think would be again an imaginary world. So the silence alone has to prevail there. So Bhagavan is saying the same thing. When told that you are not the ego, realize the reality, why do you still identify yourself with the ego? We continue to understand about the reality, about the non-reality, everything through this medium of thoughts. And whatever idea or concept we make out, we become, as Bhagavan is saying, it is like the shadow, the new shadow, which has been overlapping on our attempt to bury it. So it becomes important, therefore, to recognize that the being consciousness that we are is unaltered by any concepts, any thought, any idea, including the I thought that we would limit ourselves, wherein it limits us, limits that being consciousness to this gross body. So Bhagavan says that don't think of the monkey while taking the medicine. It is impossible. So even in a way he is saying that I will not have any thoughts, or I will watch out for no thoughts. It's all like nothing but thinking. It is similar to the act of not to think of the monkey while taking the medicine. We are nothing but, oh, I should not think about the monkey. He is again nothing but thinking about the monkey, isn't it? So likewise, it is that I should not have any thoughts is as good a thought for us. So it is impossible. Therefore, that summa iru, when Bhagavan says, that means this in a very subtle way, if you have to see, the consciousness attending to objects is nothing but attending to the ego in many, many forms. If the same consciousness, which is simply attends to itself in the form of being, then it is having something which is not changing. Whereas a consciousness attending to objects, the objects may keep changing because of the vasanas. Whereas when the consciousness attends to itself as the being, then as that I am, then again, this should not become a thought. This I am experience of the presence of oneself, or basically when it remains still, then it is attending to its own presence. Then and then only it is not holding on to the thoughts, or it is not really thinking of the medicine. Therefore, thinking of the monkey. So Bhagavan is saying here, similarly, when the reality is mentioned, why do you continue to meditate as Shivoham or Aham Brahmasmi without tracking and understanding its significance? So, if you see Bhagavan's death experience, we read it, he says that all this revelation happened to him. If we observe our own thoughts and see, the revelation will come that every time I attend to a thought, I become limited. Every time in a positive way or a negative way, if I attend to a thought, I become limited to it. And what is I? I am that consciousness to which this thought was appearing as an object. When we see the actual thing that is naturally present without using thought form, when we realize that way, Bhagavan is saying then only the reality is attended, but not by thinking, not by even meditating Shivoham or Aham Brahmasmi, but very diligently tracking and understanding is the most important. The natural way how things are happening, the understanding, because we are the consciousness, moment we start to track it, without using thoughts, observe what is happening, then we see that it's the thought which moves us away from the silence, from the natural state, makes us limited, makes us feel, and by attending to each thought, we see that the thoughts are continuously occurring. So Bhagavan says it's not enough to repeat the bare words, but to really meditate, really track it. So the vichara is about tracking and understanding the natural phenomena that is happening and to whom is it happening. When we question, it is to I. And even when I ask, who am I? What do I really refer to as I? And track it or go to that source, then we see that self alone is, and all other things is only a imaginary superimposition, and each imaginary superimposition creates a limited, and by creating creates an imaginary limitation, and by the virtue of that imaginary limitation, because we are the reality, and the imaginary limitation appears real to us. But if we don't give reality, or if we don't attend to that imaginary limitation, then the reality, the unlimited alone shines. For that, Bhagavan has given us the Atma Vichara, wherein whatever number of thoughts rises, and whether the thoughts are good, bad, or ugly, we should understand that each of them is limiting us, and therefore we should diligently inquire to whom is this thought, and it becomes clear it is for the thinker I, and therefore we should further inquire who am I. And when we trace the source of the I, or where what we refer to as I, by tracking, by understanding diligently, then the grace makes us abide in that infinite truth that we are, the being consciousness. And by repeatedly doing this, Bhagavan assures that the mind will gain enough strength to remain at the source. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with which alone we have come to this most natural and straight path of seeing the infinite which is always present, the being consciousness being always present, and by letting go the imagination through the act of inquiry and tracing it back to that being consciousness, Bhagavan assures that the mind will abide or get absorbed in the truth. The immense grace of Bhagavan, for the next 20 minutes, let us do Atma Vichar. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you all. Over to Sarada Akka.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of the self manifest as Ramana, we have been meditating on the answers given by Bhagavan to questions related to self-inquiry. All the question and answers having been compiled by Sri Rmclramananjali. And subsequent to that, we have also been practicing by that abundant grace self-inquiry for a brief while. And now in this section of the satsang, we are meditating on Bhagavan's answers to questions by various seekers, Ganapati Muni and other seekers, mainly the disciples of Ganapati Muni, whom Ganapati Muni had guided to the feet of Bhagavan Ramana after having discovered the glory of Bhagavan. And we were meditating on, we have completed our meditations on 3 chapters. The first chapter being the importance of practice, the second chapter being the Ekashloki, also called the 3 paths, third chapter being Mukhya Kartavya Nirupanam, the important, most paramount duty. And initially, the first chapter, the importance of practice is brought home, which obviously would need guidance from the Guru, and questions are asked by the seeker. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that pariprashnena sevaya, when one does service to the Guru and one asks questions, then one elicits the Upadesha from the Guru. Asking question, it is said pariprashna, which means the right kind of questions asked with earnestness and at the right time, at the appropriate time. Such questioning elicits answers from the Sadguru, which become the torches or the lights that guide our path back to the self. So the importance of practice was brought home. And then Bhagavan himself spoke, gave the essence of the truth and the way to the truth as well. So that became the immediate second chapter. And the third chapter brought home to us that abiding in the self is the paramount duty. So we know that we have to practice. We know what we have to practice in essence, in a nutshell, given by Bhagavan. And there is nothing more important than this practice. This is brought home to us. And the role of mantra japa or japa sadhana was also touched upon as part of the third chapter, and the observance of other duties, the need to continue to pursue other duties, this being given as the paramount duty, the need to pursue other duties which are cast upon us by our birth, by our circumstance, not to try to discard anything, Because to move towards discarding something would also be an act of volition, but rather to keep pursuing whatever one has to do as part of one's role play until that drops off of its own accord. This was told to us, and then the Japa sadhana was given to us. And in the last verse of the third chapter, Bhagavan said that when one constantly does mantra japa, the thought becomes completely inward turned and finally comes to rest in the self. Because there are no other thoughts. Bhagavan had said in the first answer to Daivarata's questions that the method is to turn the mind back to its source, away from objects. So the mantra sadhana is a means to turn the mind away from objects. When one holds on to the mantra, all other objects cease. All other objects cease in the horizon of our attention. All the other objects disappear. This one object remains. And Bhagavan said that the effort should be ceaseless. Mantre japte nirantaram achanchalena manasa. Without any wavering, without any doubt, will I reach, will I not reach, when will I reach, how will I reach? Without having any doubts, just focusing on the effort alone. These words remind me of a story narrated by Bhagavan, wherein he says that there was a little bird, maybe a sparrow, a little bird, which had built its nest on the shores of the sea. It may be a seagull also. So it had done that, and somehow high tide came, and the one of the eggs that had been laid in that nest got swept away by the waves of the high tide. Now this bird realized, the father bird, on coming back, found that one of the eggs was missing. And he said, "Oh my God, the ocean has swallowed one of my children. I must rescue that child of mine from the ocean. And what will I do? I will empty the ocean. I will empty the ocean, and then I will pick up that egg, that child of mine. I will rescue that." So the bird started filling its beak with water and spitting it out into the sand. Filling its beak with water and spitting it into the sand. From dawn to dusk, the bird was doing this tirelessly. Even at night, the bird was doing it tirelessly, without any thought that, can I, with my beak, empty the ocean? The little bird had only one thought: I must rescue my child, and I will do it. Somehow or the other, I will do it. I will empty the ocean. And then it is said that Garuda, the lord of birds, saw the effort of this little one, and he came and flapped his wings, the huge, humongous wings of Garuda. When they were flapped there, the ocean parted. And when the ocean parted, the little bird could see its egg, and it quickly swooped down and picked up the eggs carefully in its claws and brought it back and put it into the nest. Now, this is how Bhagavan says that grace comes in to fulfill our little effort, provided it is achanchala and nirantara. This was the great secret that we got in the third chapter about our sadhana. One secret which we got is that the highest duty cast upon us is only to abide in the self. The other important clue that we got is no matter what kind of sadhana we do, whether it's mantra japa also, it should be achanchala, it should be with total faith, and it should be continuous. Further, there are questions posed by Muni and other devotees, and sometimes Bhagavan himself giving clarification on the path. Now, the next chapter, which is the fourth chapter, is about the nature of self-abidance. So, it is Jnana Swarupa Kathanam, Chaturthodhyaya. The first question is posed by Ganapati Muni. Aham brahmasmiti vrittih kim jnanam muni kunjara uta brahmahamiti dhiraham sarvamityuta athava sakalam chaitad brahmeti jnanamuchyate asmad vidritti chatushkadva kim nu jnanam vilakshanam. This is similar to the question that came in the first part of today's satsang and was meditated upon by Dileep. Here Muni is asking, is the thought aham brahmasmi iti vrittihi kim jnanam, is the thought aham brahmasmi, is the thought I am Brahman, is that jnana? O Muni Kunjara, O great one among munis, among sages. Uta brahmahamiti dhiraham sarvamityuta, or brahmaivasmi, the other Mahavakya, is that equivalent to self-knowledge? Does that become self-knowledge? Athava sakalam chaitad brahma, that is no sarvam kalu idam brahma, that is the Mahavakya. There are I am Brahma, Brahman am I, all this I am all this is Brahman, sarvam kalu idam brahma. Okay, asmat vritti chatushkadva kimnu jnanam vilakshanam. Are these four kinds of meditations, are they all self-knowledge, or is it different? Is self-knowledge different from all these four? This is the question. And Bhagavan is answering. Imam mama guru prashnam ante vasina adarat akarna ramano vakyam uvacha Bhagavan munihi vrittayo bhavanayeva sarva yetana samshayah Swarupavasthitim shuddham jnanamahurmanishinaha. Having heard Bhagavan, having heard my question, says Muni, he answered. What does he say? Vrittayo bhavana eva. Bhavana. When there is a thought, it is a concept. If it is a thought, it's a concept. Repeatedly today, Dileep was saying, one should not make it into a thought. One should not make the sadhana into a thought. So Bhagavan says, Vrittayo bhavana eva. All these are only concepts. Any thought is a concept. But swarupavasthitim shuddham. One should be abiding in the self. Self-abidance alone is pure knowledge. Self-abidance alone is knowledge. Earlier also Bhagavan had told us that even in the very first chapter, he had told us. Muni is here getting the clarification, the same clarification with regard to the Mahavakyas. Earlier, in the first chapter, Muni had asked whether the discrimination between real and unreal, Satya, Satya, Viveka, is Jnana. But there it is a Viveka. Here it is a concept. It is a meditation on a concept. Does that become Jnana? If I keep on thinking Aham Brahmasmi or Sarvam Kalu Idam Brahma, all this is Brahman, this is Ishvara. If I keep on thinking, does it become Jnana? No, that is not Jnana. Jnana is only self-abidance. So Bhagavan says in Ulladinarpadu, that is told, the Mahavakya is told in order to awaken the mind to the truth. After that, one should not further meditate on the words, but one should abide in the self. So what does one do? One can do it through turning. Just now Bhagavan has told us, by turning the attention back to the self. By trying to turn the attention back to the self, automatically it gets erased. The ego gets erased and it abides as the self. Muni then says that, having heard Bhagavan's answer, he says, I asked him another doubt. Another doubt. It's not the same doubt. I asked him another doubt, he says. What is that? He says, Guror vachastadakarnya samshayachedakarakam. Because once Bhagavan has uttered something, there can be no further doubt with regard to that point. Samshayachedakarakam, says Muni. Muni's faith is like that. So, apricham punarevaham anyam samshayamudgatam. I asked him another doubt, another question. No further doubt regarding this. Vritti vyapyam bhaved brahma navanatha tapasvinam imam me hridi sanjatam samshayacchetumarhasi. Lord of the sages, can Brahman be comprehended by thought? So how do I know Brahman? How will I come to know Brahman? How will I become aware of Brahman? If I cannot comprehend the truth, if I cannot comprehend the self with my mind, how will I come to know it? You are telling me, it's not related at all to the first question, says Muni. The first question was about the Mahavakya, okay. But now I had another doubt. Can thought reach Brahman? And what did Bhagavan do listening to my question? Tamimam prashnamakranya mitram angrijusham rishihi. So beautifully Muni describes Bhagavan. He says, he is the friend, he is the apta, mitram of whom? Of those who take refuge in his feet. Angrijusham. Mitram Angrijusham. And how does he show his friendship? How does he show his affection? Abhishitya katakshena mamidam vakyam abravit. He bathed me with his glance. He did abhisheka to me with his kataksha, with his glance of grace, the Muni said. Whenever I come to this phrase, I cannot help remembering our earlier president of Ramanashramam, Sri V.S. Ramanan, who pointed out the beauty of this phrase to me. Abhishikche katakshena, like a mother bathes her child and cleanses the child. Bhagavan, says Muni, he bathed me with his glance of grace. Muni always records that Bhagavan's answers were preceded by his glance of grace. And that in itself would finish most of the task. After that, the words came. The words were there in case we still felt incomplete. And what did Bhagavan say? Swatma bhutam yadi brahma jnatum vrittih pravartate swatma kara tada bhutva na prithak pratitishthati. So Bhagavan says, if thoughts seek to comprehend Brahman, which is one's self, it loses its separate entity and becomes that. So, this is what Bhagavan is saying. If one keeps holding on to any other concept, it will be a concept. But if it tries to look for its own self, which it does in self inquiry, then it loses its separateness, it loses its separate identity and remains as the very self. So, this Muni says, he ends by saying, this brief, thrilling conversation took place on the 21st of July 1917. Isha, so ayam pragukta evabde saptame tvekavimshake. अभवन्नौमितग्रन्थं संवादो रोमहर्षणः. So he says this conversation took place on 21st of, so he says that is Ekavimshake. So that is the 21st of July, 7th month, Saptami of 1917. This conversation took place wherein Bhagavan again reiterates the significance of self-inquiry and the beauty of self-inquiry, that if thought turns towards its source, if thought seeks its own nature, then alone will it melt into the self. By His grace, when He says, whenever He gives us an answer, as the Muni says, Avishaccha Kataksha, Bhagavan's glance of grace bathes every one of us. It purifies every one of us. And it is the assurance, as He says, Mitram Angrejusham Rishihi. So He is a friend. He is the friend of all who have taken refuge in Him. And as the friend, He ensures that we don't merely comprehend mentally what the import of His words, but are able to experience the fullness of His grace as the self. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Akka. Apara Satchit Sukhavarirashi Yasyornimatram Bhuvanam Samastam Guhahitam Tam Ramanam Gabhiram Chintavihinam Hridi Chintayami Chintavihinam Hridi Chintayami.
Namo Ramana. Thank you, Dileep.